Nice to be here and talk to each one of you.
Thank you very much. And from then, we will move over to Engineer Dr. Silva Mugisha of the Water Firm.
Dr. Engineer Silva Mugisha was appointed Managing Director of the National Water and Sewerage Corporation, NWSC, Uganda, in August 2013. Since his appointment, he has led the corporation with heart, inculcating a strong work ethic and high level of professionalism while fostering a positive service culture and a united leadership approach, enabling the corporation to achieve high organizational performance and international recognition. Among other things, Dr. Engineer Silva Mugisha launched the corporation's first ever 5-year strategic direction, key among its focus areas being to ensure accelerated service delivery and water provision for all. The service footprint of National Water and Sewerage Corporation has increased to 258 towns to date, up from only 24 in 2013.
Engineer, do you want to say hello as well?
Good evening, viewers. I'm happy to be here and welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. And we are on air largely because of Mr. Selestino Bahungi, who is powering us tonight.
Selestino Bahungi is the Managing Director of UMEME Limited, the main electricity distribution company in Uganda. He has served in the role for the last 6 years, previously having served in several management positions, including as UMEME's Chief Financial Officer. Over the years, UMEME has transformed Uganda's electricity distribution sector, evidenced by increasing customers connected on the grid from 250,000 to 1.6 million, rolling out prepaid metering Yaka to 96% of its customers, driving electricity sector financial viability through reduction of energy losses from 38% to 16.4% and improving revenue collections from 80% to 99.8%. More than doubling size of the distribution network, innovating and digitizing the business operations for an efficient and better customer experience, and mobilized and invested over $700 million to private capital to complement government in the development and improvement of Uganda's electricity distribution network.
Selestino, you want to say good evening as well?
Good evening, viewers. Glad to be here and looking forward to the engagement tonight.
Fantastic. We'll go over to Gideon or Gideon, depending on where you started education, but we will certainly not be debating on the pronunciation of Badagawa. Do you go for Gideon or Gideon?
Gideon.
Gideon. Yes. That's actually a third one. Do you want to say good evening as well?
A very good evening to all our viewers. I'm happy you have me this evening, and thanks be to Next Media. I'm looking forward to a very wonderful discussion.
And so are we. And last but by no means least is, well, let's get to the profile there.
Patrick Bitature is the founder and chairman of Simba Group of Companies based in Uganda and the chairman of the board of UMEME Uganda Limited. He also previously served as chairman of the board of directors for Uganda Investment Authority and several other organizations. Founded in 1998 with the flagship Simba Telecom business, Simba Group is now a conglomerate of East African companies spanning telecommunications, properties, power generation, agribusiness, oil and gas, health and education, tourism, and social enterprise. Bitature also serves as a patron of the Alliance of Mayors and Municipal Leaders on HIV/AIDS in Africa, Cure, Children's Home Uganda, among other goodwill initiatives.
Ladies and gentlemen watching us tonight, this is us now getting into the meat of the organization, and we'll begin with you, Lady Kagina. On a daily basis, you have a job at Uganda National Roads Authority. What do you do there?
I manage a very large institution that is responsible for managing, maintaining, and developing the national network. This national network is part of a larger network of roads, approximately 150,000 kilometers. Our portion is only 21,010 kilometers. And so what we do is really connect Uganda. We build the roads, we maintain the roads, and we protect the roads. That's my job.
Fantastic. And how, because you came from another organization to this one, how complex is that job?
It's a completely different arena. In a sense, it's easier because...
You could pull that down so we can get to... Yes, fantastic.
Yeah, okay. So in a sense, it's easier because I am not extracting taxes from you. I made so many enemies, and we collected a lot of revenue. So I am now using the revenue that is being collected to develop the national network. But it's complex in its sense because this is an engineering area, and the demand for roads in this country is really high. So trying to meet that demand and getting the skills within and without, because we use the private sector, is where the complexity comes from with a limited budget. And it's quite interesting having to navigate these complexities to be able to develop the network. But we're winning, like everybody knows. You can move from one part of the country to the other.
And if I may, when you're collecting taxes, it feels as if you're collecting a bunch. When you get to start to use them, it feels as if you're not getting enough. Do you sort of see that difference?
Completely. I'm one of those who says we don't have enough, and yet we have, I think, one of the largest budgets in the country.
And if I may, can one out of you tonight get a brief history of this organization?
The UNRA?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. UNRA was, the UNRA Act was passed in Parliament and signed into law in 2006. So we've been in existence actually from 2008 because there was a transition where we went through another transitional body. So we actually started business in 2008. However, before that, roads were being constructed, and they were constructed under the Ministry of Works, a portion of the roads under the district authorities, urban authorities, and then the communities. So from 2008 to date, we have done many roads across the country. We've expanded, we've reformed. Our budget has tripled. I think in 2000, before 2008, our budget was about 300 million. In about 2 years, it jumped to 300 billion, sorry. It jumped to 1 trillion. And where we speak right now, we're at 3.8 trillion, just for UNRA. We've gone through several changes, remodeling our systems so that we can provide a better service. And all in all, I think we are making progress. We're seeing that we can deliver more roads now and faster than we have done in the past. So basically, that's UNRA. We report to a board of directors that is appointed by the Minister of Works and Transport.
Thank you very much. We'll certainly come back to you. Let's get to Engineer Dr. Silva Mugisha, the body responsible for one of the biggest needs of any society, water. If I asked you, who is you, National Water and Sewerage Corporation, very briefly, what would you say?
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Kasumba. National Water and Sewerage Corporation is a government parastatal. A government parastatal means it is 100% owned by government, but it operates like a private sector. The law mandates national that operate in a commercially and financially viable manner. Now, its core mandate is to provide water and sewerage services, largely in urban centers of Uganda, and of course, following those areas that the minister has by law gazetted to it. Right now, we are operating in 258 towns, having moved from about 5 towns about 30 years ago. We have we serve about 15 million people, having moved from serving less than 500,000 people in 1990. Our coverage is about 85% now in these areas where we serve, having moved up from 18% 30 years ago. Our network has increased from 300 kilometers. We are now talking of 20,000 kilometers of the big pipes, the pipes which serve people. We used to have 20,000 connections in 1990. We are now talking of 700,000 connections, coming to 800,000. The revenues, because I've told you we are operating in a financially viable manner. About 1990, we had a turnover of about 20 billion. We are now talking of close to 500 billion. So this is an institution that has been growing over time and that has increasingly had capacity to serve its customers. And I am happy to say that we make a surplus which we reinvest in serving more people, more Ugandans.
And in terms of, because when you explain what you explain, somebody can see huge milestone that have been made. But when you're on the side of those who don't have water, it might be a very different one.
Yeah.
Vis-a-vis those two images, where would you place yourself?
Oh, well, that's a very important question, and it is at the heart of our corporate planning process every 3 years. Every 3 years, we actually focus more on those people who haven't got our services. You can do anything else, but for us, those people who haven't got services is core to our corporate planning process. That's why I told you that we have moved from 18% service coverage, meaning that the people who didn't have water about 30 years ago were about 80%. We are now talking about less than 15% of the people who don't have water. So the issue of those who haven't got water is a very significant issue as far as we are concerned, and it is an issue we try to address every day. And I'm happy that we now have 100% service coverage acceleration plan, where we hope that in the next 3 or 4 years, we shall have reached everybody that has not been reached.
Thank you very much. And of course, if Uganda is to grow, we need our roads, we need our water, but even the president speaks about electricity every time he speaks about industrialization. And thankfully, Selestino is with us this evening. A very special welcome to yourself. Selestino, what is it like being where you see it, knowing the needs of this nation?
Okay, thank you, Samson. Glad to be here. I think the needs are real, and if you step back and look at why the electricity sector was reformed in the early 2000s, because of the needs. We had less than 10% of Ugandans with access to electricity. We had only 180 megawatts of power generation. The sector was significantly unviable, right? In that government had always to pump in tax revenues to fund it. So that's how UMEME was formed. And glad that really we know our mandate, really. Our mandate is to bridge.
For our audiences, you want to pull that mic a little closer to yourself.
Okay.
Okay.
For our mandate, really, it's very, very clear. Our mandate is to deliver power that is reliable in a safe manner to the end consumers, grow the customer base, drive efficiencies, to make the sector commercially viable and less dependent on government. And when you look over the period from the time UMEME started in 2005 to where we are now, we've added on more than 1.3 million consumers to the grid. If you look at generation, Uganda has been able to attract private capital with over 40 independent power producers. Once Karuma and Achua are commissioned, we'll be moving from the 180 megawatts of early 2000 to 2,000 megawatts in this country. In terms of efficiency, the sector is now generating around 2 trillion shillings. We are not looking for KIF to provide some money from Ministry of Finance to finance all this infrastructure, but we're generating it from efficiencies and ability of our consumers to pay their bills. Our mandate is very clear, really. If you look at Uganda, all the way COVID has demonstrated why we need energy for education. The financial sector needs energy, street lighting needs energy, industrialization needs energy, health facilities are moved towards energy needs. And I'm glad that as we speak, 26% of Ugandans are on the grid. We understand the gap, that 24 are using rooftops, and we know there is a 50% of households in Uganda that need access to energy, and that's the real burning platform. The ambition of government under NDP3 and the national development plans are very clear. If you look, if you have moved to middle income status, we must move away from the current per capita consumption of 100 kilowatt hours per capita in Uganda to 500. So we know the strides we need to move. It's like 5 times from where we're operating now. And we're glad with the significant investments the government has put in generation, significant investments in transmission, our investments we are putting as UMEME, complemented with the works that are done by REA and other government agencies to drive Ugandans towards electrification, because we understand the impact of electrification vis-a-vis national development.
Just like I asked your colleagues before you, you're talking about 26% connection. Ugandans listening to radio on these powered by dry cells are hearing a man working very hard. But in a sense, and you won't blame them, they don't see the light, which is the significant indication of your hard work. Do you understand why it might be difficult for them to understand that you actually work hard?
No, we work hard. As the CEO of the institution, I wake up every day to lead 1,600 staff whose passion is to ensure that power is delivered to every industry, every commercial enterprise, and every home of the 1.6 million consumers we serve. We understand that we have another 3.5 households who have access to energy, right? And we have to work hard to get them onto the grid. We also understand the government ambitions. So every day you wake up, you ask yourself, how am I delivering safe power? How am I ensuring that my 1,600 staff are safe, because electricity can kill? How am I ensuring that I'm enabling the economy to run education institutions, financial institutions, health facilities, lighting, all these street lights, industry, right? And consumers may not understand, but we know that what's important for them is keep the lights on to enable them to do their jobs that they need to do with power. And to reassure you, we are working very hard on that. Secondly, looking at the way Uganda is distributed, we understand there are innovations in technology on energy that have come through. The grid may take long to reach everyone in Uganda, so we are working on another plan of, like mobile phones came and jumped the fixed lines, in terms of looking at renewables as an accelerated way of delivering energy to households in Uganda, using either rooftops or mini grids. And that's the next generation we are looking at to ensure that we can cover the other 50% of households that don't have access to the grid power.
Thank you very much. Let me come to you just before I go back, Gideon. The 230 member organizations of the private sector foundation in Uganda, many of them would want a good road. When they are going to produce, they will need water in their industries. They'll certainly need electricity. You've heard the opening remarks. Give us a sense of where they are in terms of needing and using these services, and what exactly would you want to hear, to go back to tell them, you know what, we are doing very well and we need to be very hopeful.
Thank you very much, Samson, and a very good evening again to our viewers. I'm really very happy that we have an interface with the big providers of the infrastructure that the private sector actually needs to compete, to be more productive, and become more profitable, so that we can pay taxes and be able to energize government to give us even more infrastructure. Now, the theme this evening has been understanding infrastructure. And I'm really very happy that the introductions have been made towards real positive reform as far as infrastructure provision in this country is concerned. Now, why do we spend as much money on infrastructure? It is for two things, basically, from the perspective of the private sector. And the first one is to improve the livelihoods of our people. And we speak about many types of infrastructure here. The ones you see here are only three. You see energy, you see water, you see roads. But you can talk about health infrastructure, education infrastructure. You speak about many, many, many things. Agriculture infrastructure, financial, anything. It's about infrastructure. How do we improve the livelihoods of our people? Then the second one is business performance, so that we become more competitive. If you mention a road, it's about access to markets. Can I be able to sell, and more efficiently so that you reduce the cost of doing business? This is what the private sector person is looking for. We invest to make money. How do you make money? By suppressing costs and maximizing profits. This is the, the equation that anyone writes, any business person wants to write. Water, the utilities, electricity, and so on. It's about the cost. You've had the president talk about moving down from 12 US cents per kilowatt hour down to 5. And we are steadily moving towards that. If you ask the large manufacturers in this country, they will tell you that they are consuming power already at 5 US cents, especially at off-peak hours. This is already happening. You have seen from the side of water, the significant amount of work that is already being done across the country. The same thing goes for ICT infrastructure and so on and so forth. Different types of infrastructure. And all this towards helping the private sector to benefit more and help the economy grow. Without infrastructure, we cannot grow. And without if you like, without us supporting the private sector through infrastructure, we cannot have growth in the economy. Because growth in the economy is anchored on the health of the private sector. So yes, I think there is a lot of progress that is being made. Of course, we are not yet there. If you are talking about the ideal situation, we are far from it. I think, but we are steadily moving towards that. If you look at how many roads have been opened, both the trunk, but also the community access roads, the district community access roads and so on, because the farmer out there is even more interested in community access roads. If you're a farmer down in Kamwenge or Kapchora, the question is, how do you quickly get your maize across to Mbale, across to Kapchora? How do you quickly get your milk from Kamwenge or whatever down to Mbarara so that we can add value? Is there electricity? Yes. This is what drives the economy through the private sector.
Thank you very much. And let's come to you, Mr. Bitature. It's going to be down to the road to your hotel. And there's no visitor who wants to go to have a shower, and then they find out that there's no power, and then there's a fantastic explanation for that and where you're going to invest as an investor. Water and electricity are certainly huge, and roads, of course, there. Do you think we are moving the way we should be moving?
Thank you, Samson, and thank you, viewers, for making the time to be up with us at this late hour. First of all, let's put things in perspective. Uganda as a country, we have squandered a lot of time. But I'd like to make it very clear that now we are on the right track. If a child is born today in Norway, a child has a very high chance of living to 80 years and living a quality life. A child born in Uganda has not yet got to that level. But a child born in Uganda today is certainly much better than a child born 40 years ago. The conditions in this country, a country that is so full of natural resources, water, fantastic weather, why are we so disadvantaged compared to children in Norway or the first world? Because we didn't have the building blocks in place. In Rome, 6,000 years ago, they worked it out. They needed roads 6,000 years ago. Egypt, in 1800, realized they needed water. And they started negotiating with the British colonial powers at the time for the River Nile waters, because water is life. So we needed roads, we needed water, we need electricity. The Industrial Revolution would never have happened without electricity. When Thomas Edison discovered power or made power universal or democratized it in the United States around the late 1800s, early 1900s. That's when the Industrial Revolution took off. So without these fundamental building blocks, in Uganda, what were we doing? Since independence, we had like 50 megawatts of power and we're thumping our chests. Then, come 1986, we had about 100 megawatts of power. Today, we are looking in the year 2021 at 1,800 megawatts of power on the grid available. For the first time, we have an overhang of supply over demand. So we have power in abundance. We have water in abundance. We hardly had any tarmac roads. The work my sister here has done in the last 12 years is incredible. To see that we have built an infrastructure across the country from any point. You come from Kisoro right to Kotido to Elegu on tarmac roads. Of course, there's still a challenge within Kampala. People are complaining about the potholes. But I'm glad City Council is getting its act together, hopefully this time. They realize the need.
Just to interrupt you there, she certainly has done a very good job, but some would say that the number of off-road vehicles imported in this country don't make a very good advertisement of her work, do they?
There will be room for cynicism, but I like to put things in perspective. From where we have come from, we have done an incredible job. And for the first time, we are on track because we've got our priorities right. We've always had a limited resource. It will never be enough money. But now we've got our priorities in order, and we as Ugandans must come together and be proud of the accomplishments we've made, because we've got to be strategic. What is being strategic? To know where you are coming from, to know where you are, to know where you want to go, and making a plan how to get there. That is being strategic. Now we've got the plans in place. It's the execution. And I'm glad that the three powerhouses of Uganda's infrastructure are here today.
Okay.
So I talk as private sector because I'm a user now. I've interacted with them quite closely, but now I'm a user because our taxpayers that they are spending.
Okay.
We need to make sure it's accounted.
Fantastic. Coming back to you, Lady Allen, there is, and has always been the argument, that too much is being spent on infrastructure. And yet, we want roads. How much more do you need to get us the kind of roads, quality and distance that will get us to all start to see that now we are the Pearl of Africa?
Okay, let me try and put that in context. Our 21,010 kilometers, only a portion, only 26% of that is paved. In other words, it's tarmac. It has a black top. Those are the trunk roads, the big roads. The rest, 15,000 plus, are in gravel condition. We would want to tarmac the 21,000 kilometers, but we have just enough to do the 5,398 kilometers, which are now paved. So do we actually have enough? It is a question which is relative to what the other sectors need. And I think when you have a small basket, you try and share as much as you can to those sectors that will produce other wealth for the others to be able to do their part. But in prioritizing expenditure, investment and expenditure, what government does is look at sectors which, when they are invested in, they trigger growth elsewhere. And so it is a matter of sequencing who gets what, when, so that there is enough revenue. For example, right now, we're doing the oil roads. We call them the oil roads. These are the roads that will serve the fields, the oil fields, and the Kabale airport and the oil refinery. If we don't do that infrastructure, if we do not invest into that infrastructure, then the oil will never come out. Or if we don't do tourism roads or roads to minerals, for example, in Karamoja. So in a sense, if you're comparing us with other sectors, perhaps it does seem like we have a lot of money. But when you come back to what we actually need to do, we do not have enough money.
Thankfully, you're speaking on a night in which those who make those decisions are watching. Is there a case for more?
There is certainly a case for more. Because we want to go beyond. In the NDP 3, we want to increase the paved stock from the current 5,300 to 7,500. That's how far we want to go. And that will help not just complete the trunk roads that we're working on, but also we'll do what we call Class B or second-class roads, which are not, I've had to explain this several times to so many people, that Class B or Class 2 roads does not mean that it's a lower grade. It's just functionality. Class B roads are those which connect the trunk roads. Class A, to connect a Class A and Class A. So if you have a Class A here and a Class A here, the one that connects the two is a Class B road. Now that we have done the trunk roads, or almost completing the trunk roads, we actually need to do the Class B and C so that the entire country is networked, it is connected. For us to do that, we definitely need more money. But even more importantly, we must have more money for maintaining what we have developed.
Yes.
You know, assets lose value if they're not maintained. And these are very expensive assets that we have in Uganda. The road asset is one of the most expensive assets that Uganda has. But it loses value if it is not maintained. And currently, our maintenance budget is really dismal. We have about 310 billion this year. We could do with 600 billion so that we can maintain the roads in motorable condition, even those that are in gravel condition, so that you don't have washouts, you don't have bridges being washed away, you don't have landslides completely covering a road. So, yeah.
So, and I'm picking interest here. How dangerous is it if we spend so much on building and then thin the budget on maintenance? Because you just brought something quite interesting there.
Well, you lose whatever you put in. Roads have a lifespan. The roads we're doing have a lifespan of about 15 years. In year 7, perhaps towards 9 and 10, you should start maintaining it so that you give it more service life. If you don't do that, that's when you develop the big potholes, and once you've got a pothole, it's likely to expand. Some of the famous roads we're dealing with right now, there's a section between Lira and Kamdina, about 70 kilometers. Because we did not intervene in time, we now actually have to reconstruct it, like we had not done it before. So having enough money for maintaining is perhaps even more important than developing new roads, because you must keep what you have.
Thank you very much. And probably later on in the night, I hear some already asking, why are we building those that have a lifespan of 15 years? Well, if it is going to be 100 years, then that's cause for building it anyway. Dr. Silva, you mentioned something, that it seems as if, even with your hard work, the demand to get on the grid is huge, and we might never get to the point where we even catch up with the demand. Is that true?
I don't think that our planning is that we should reach 100% coverage of those people who haven't got water. So, but of course, it's a challenge, a good challenge though, that Ugandans have continued to produce. You know that the growth rate for Uganda is the population.
You mean babies?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. I thought maize and sugarcane.
The more you produce, the more the demand increases. And for me, I take it as a very good challenge. Now, what we need to do is to be efficient in the way we operate these systems, in the way we invest, so that we reach those who haven't got water. Now, there are so many things we are doing, as I told you, to make sure that we reach those who haven't got water, both on the production side of water and also on the distribution side. Now, where challenges of increased demand normally come is after you've distributed water, like the way we have done in Kampala, you then get a challenge on the production side. So, but being technical people, this is not hard for us to do. For example, as you will know, and as the listeners might want to know, there are some water supply challenges here in Kampala. But a lot of work is being done. Our demand for Kampala is about 300 million liters of water per day. And we are only able to supply 240 million liters of water per day. meaning that we have a deficit of about 60 million liters of water per day. But very soon, maybe in a month's time, we shall add 160 million liters of water per day from the Katosi water treatment plant. And that will definitely make more water available for people to consume. So our people who are in Namugongo, who are in Mbarwa, who are in generally the northeastern part of Kampala, where water is scarce, very soon they are going to get water. So we never worry. Ugandans can continue to produce, and I think we are geared. We are geared to meet the demand, because we need people to be able to also develop our country, to be able to buy the things we produce.
When you say Ugandans can continue to produce, one wonders whether they're asking them to add to GDP, but that's a different sector when we deal with health. You speak of 160 million, but if we are in deficit by about 60 million, how long will the 160 million liters be enough for? Because by the time it comes on, we might be good for 6 months, then again we are back to square one.
No, the 160 additional water which we want to put on the grid, we projected that by 2025, we should, the 300 million liters of water per day should have gone towards 400.
Okay.
And that's the total we are now planning to have. The 240 which we have, plus 160, which will make it 400 million liters of water per day. Now with 300 and with the population growth which we have, we know that by 2025, we need to be able to add more water. That's why that treatment plant of Katosi, which is going to add 160, has an intake of 240, meaning that we can easily add another line there to make it 240, and that will make the total supply side of 480. We are also planning a water treatment plant at Kazi on Lake Victoria, which will add 65,000 liters of water, rather cubic meters of water per day. That's 65 million liters of water per day, and that will take it to about 500 million liters of water per day. And that should take us to over 15 years. And I think that will make our capacity enough to be able to support industrial growth in the country. So I think there is no worry, and all these resources, government has already secured them, so we should be able to be up to the task of making sure that we meet the demand.
So let's begin here. That talking about the metropolitan area and the environs, when do we see water shortage history?
Well, I think all this narrative I've been presenting here is for Kampala.
Okay.
So in the next 1 or 2 months, we should be able to see, at least we shall have sufficient water production for Kampala.
Okay.
What will be remaining for us is to distribute it, because that water comes from Katosi, it gets stored at Nsumba here, I think about 8 kilometers from Katosi, Lake Victoria there. It comes to Seta and also Namugongo, where we have huge reservoirs. Now the issue, or the next task we are going to start doing, is to get that water from the reservoirs and distribute it to the people. But at least we shall have solved the issue of water production. We shall now be remaining with the issue of distributing it to the what? The customers. We still have some challenges in other places. In Masaka, we also have a challenge of water there. But very soon we're going to start constructing a treatment plant at the Lake Victoria, which will also increase water supply for Masaka. As you know, Masaka is now a city, and we are trying to make sure that we are up to the task of supplying the city. Mbara is the same thing. Mbara has water supply challenges, and the situation gets worse in the dry season when River Wizi dries up. So we are going to pick water from River Kagera, bring it all the way, serving the Isinjiro district, and then also increase water for Masaka. Chisoro is another place. We have put a new treatment plant at Inkanka. It is going to increase water production for Kisoro. And when you go, I'm just making a quick scan of the things we are doing. You go to Bonyoro side, Hoima has been having a water supply challenge. We have completed the bid now. We are going to increase the production there so that the water supply challenges that have been in the town are reduced. Masindi, we recently completed expansion works at Chanja. Is a certain swamp there with a dam called Chanja. Now, Lira is another place where we have a challenge, and the problem there is that we don't have enough pumping capacity, but very soon, and I think just now, they are installing additional pumping capacity so that we have enough water for Lira. For Guru, which has now been made a city, we recently completed the project. We are picking more water from Karuma and taking it, serving all the towns along the way as you go to Guru. So Guru is going to have enough water, even when it becomes a city. Arua is the same thing. We recently completed a treatment plant there, but we are planning another one. We are planning another one because Arua has been made a city, so we want to make sure that we have sufficient water for that city. Soroti has also become a city. We want to pick more water from Awoja swamp. It's a swamp with a lot of water, and take it and make sure that the town is properly served, especially when it becomes a city. Mbare has also become a city. There is a project which is about to start now, which is going to make sure that the town or the city has sufficient water. Moroto has also become...
I was about to ask you if you remember that there's a place in Uganda called Karamoja.
Moroto is another place which is our concern. So we are designing a project that is going to cover Soroti, Moroto, and Arua at the same time. Jinja is another one where we are also planning to increase water production. So there are many other places where water production has been outstripped by demand, and we have plans in place to make sure that we increase water production there. As we now work on the distribution side to make sure that the people get water, because you can have a water treatment plant, but if you don't distribute water, then it is a white elephant.
Okay, thank you very much. And for our viewers, what I hear is that it's like that proverbial, the salary is now in the bank. What remains is to distribute it in the individual accounts. Good. Let's get to Selestino. Selestino, I'd like to hear like what I heard, milestones that have been registered and are being registered to make sure that we move away from 26% to something a lot better than that.
Yeah, thank you, Samson. I think if you step back, you have to look at the country. Look 10 years ago, look where we are now, and look where we are going. A number of projects have been implemented, I can say. If you start from the generation side, from 180 megawatts to now 2,000 megawatts with after commissioning of Karuma and Achua dams. So as a country, it's a good thing to have that you have adequate power, so an industrialist can come and plug in his industry, operate without worrying about load shedding. But what are we doing as UMEME in terms of on the distribution end, coupled with what transmission is doing? I'll start from northern Uganda. If you go to Gulu, last year alone, we upgraded the substation, integrated it to Achua 1 dam, right, to ensure that we improve supply of power to Gulu. And also, currently, there's an upgrade ongoing, funded by government, on the integration line from Lira to Gulu. Come down to Lira itself. There's a massive transmission substation being built, integrated with Karuma. Once Karuma is commissioned, that substation now, Lira will be, and the north will be served from both Karuma and the line coming from Mbale. If you come down to Mbale, a lot of work was done last year. Not only did we increase, was the transmission capacity not increased by 50 megawatts in that area, we invested in a new substation, putting in capacitor banks, and I got feedback from the Elgon region Elgon region customers saying that for the first time they've had more reliable power in their area than before because of the works we did. Step to Tororo. Tororo is a fast-growing area. We saw 3 industries spring up in one go. It's the one of Simba, the Lafarge, Tororo Cement expanding, the phosphorus plant notwithstanding. Capacity in that area was increased by 8 MVA. From a transmission perspective, and our customers there are stable. Come to Ginger. Ginger is the fastest growing. I think Ginger is discovering its old glory. We are seeing 25% year-on-year growth in that area. This year alone, not only are we planning an injection of $5 million to upgrade infrastructure in that area, but also we built lines to a new industrial park called Buikwe, where already we are seeing 8 MVA capacity of demand coming in. If you stroll towards Mukono, not only was there a transmission substation built at Mukono North, but also we built integration lines, including a line to Katosi, which is serving my colleague Dr. Mugisha's new plant that is put in Katosi, plus other integration lines in that area where there's a high growth in Mukono. If you come to Namamve, coming near home, not only is there what we call Namamve North, a new substation from transmission, but also as we remember, we built integration lines to stabilize supply in Namamve. Actually, in Namamve, even to get a shutdown, you have hardly to negotiate with industries because they don't want any blink or non-availability of power in that area. If you come to Kampala, a lot of work was done last year. Nakawa alone, we put up a new substation. Kakiri, we put up a new substation. Namugongo, we upgraded that substation. We built another line to Gaba Waterworks. Challenge was that Gaba was being served by one line from Lugogo. So whenever power would have an issue, National Water would be up saying, oh, UMEME. But now what we've done is we have built another line coming from Queen's substation all the way to Gaba. So that when one is off, another one can be fed. If you look at Kampala generally, with its high growth, there's a significant stability in terms of reliability of supply. When you look at the North Corridor, we did some work in terms of upgrading the Bombo substation. We're also planning a switching station somewhere along that interconnector that goes to Kapeka. Not thinking about the Kapeka Industrial Park. But overall, our strategy is simple. We are saying we need first drive, power, reliability, to high economic hubs to create jobs and put money in people's pockets through industrialization, through the industrial parks, through commercial activity. The second strategy is to drive access under the Uganda'S Economic Electricity Connections Policy, ECP, adding another 300,000 per annum in terms of connection. The third element we are looking at, we know the grid will delay. Can we put up a renewable energy strategy where we can leapfrog the grid and connect customers to rooftops and mini grids? All that is really driving. We know every person holding a mobile phone will need power to power that phone. Everybody having a maize mill to process that maize needs power. Every health facility now, to do any diagnostic, is no longer with our old microscopes. They are gadgets that need power to ensure that they can diagnose diseases and treat them. We understand that education now, you need power. You have to be online to deliver. And those challenges, we are aware of them. We are working around the clock to ensure that we continue to drive Uganda's electrification agenda.
Thank you very much. I'll certainly come back to you, gentlemen, Gideon and Patrick, and to our viewers. When we come back, this conversation certainly gets a little deeper. We will be asking, is there a connection between how much money you want for compensation and the price of a road in Uganda when you continue to argue that our roads are the most expensive? We'll also be asking, should you have power when you're willing to steal it? Or should you have water when you want it free of charge, even when you argue that you fought for it? We'll come back right after this break.
I'm growing up, I'm growing into every moment.
Thanks, Mom. Nurture the moment with Minute Maid Delight, global #1 juice and juice drinks.
Uganda, the land of sunshine. Breathtaking, stunning sights, incredibly extensive large greenery. Variety of wild animals and bird species. range of luxury holiday facilities. Diverse, rich culture. The home of beautiful, welcoming, hospitable people. Uganda, the Pearl of Africa.
Today tastes like a new tradition, like an old favorite. Tastes like all hands on deck and all eyes on the prize. Today tastes like a piece of the action, and it never tasted this good.
Between 200 and 350 million people live within or adjacent to forested areas around the world. Local communities are at the forefront of the symbiotic relationship between humans and forests, forest-dwelling wildlife species, and the ecosystem services they provide. This 3rd March 2021, Uganda will join the rest of the world to commemorate World Wildlife Day 2021 under the theme Forests and Livelihoods, Sustaining People and Planet, as a way to highlight the central role of forests, forest species and ecosystems serving in sustaining the livelihoods of hundreds of millions of people globally. Join us for a talk show Thursday 25th February 9 a.m. on UBC, powered by Ministry of Tourism, Wildlife and Antiquities and partners.
Hello, how are you? Tell me, how do you do? We're here to show some appreciation for the things you do. Sent you for today, and they sent you for tomorrow. Sent you for every time and everywhere you go. We love you so, and we enjoy life with you. We are happy to know that we will go with you. That's why we say thank you, thank you, thank you, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you for choosing MTN. Use MTN mobile money, bundles or other services to get Thank You points. The more you use, the more Thank You points you get. We look forward to many more years together. Thank you.
Parlor and Spa, your beautification destination. We believe in suitable beauty. We offer pedicure and manicure, makeup, hair hairstyling, plating, weaving, dreadlocks, massage, waxing, facial and body scrub, name it. We also offer additional services like honeymoon packages, hiring venues, and vehicles for brides and grooms. Training interns from different beauty schools. We are located on Uganda House, ground floor 5. Call to book for your appointment on 0702-645-015 or 0414-696-229. You can WhatsApp us on 0752-645-005. Email us beyondbeautyparlor@yahoo.com.
It's no secret that ICT makes learning easy.
The strides made in our field could not be possible without it.
And now we can watch our favorite show.
My radio is my best friend.
UCC provides an enabling regulatory environment and policy guidance for healthy competition. We also facilitate ease of doing business in the communications sector through licensing, standardization, spectrum management, tariff regulation, rural communication development, and consumer empowerment. An informed consumer is an empowered consumer. UCC supports local content and innovations, driving the development of a robust
country. We are talking infrastructure, we are talking our roads, we're talking our water, or is it water? And we're also talking our electricity. We also have persons from the private sector. We do have Gideon and Patrick, the users, listening to the givers. It's quite an interesting conversation here, and we are getting into the second half and the final half of that. And you want to make a date with us every Monday, because we're going to be bringing leaders of various organizations that are supposed to be mandated, and indeed are mandated, with willing this nation to its rightful potential by the end of what we're doing. We want Uganda to be leading. Yes, Uganda can be leading, and I want to be taken to jail for believing in Uganda and being positive, but the last time I checked, there wasn't an offense to that end. So I am in good company here. Let's come to you, Patrick. You mentioned the importance of investing in infrastructure, but you do interact quite a bunch with Ugandans. Do you think that the general Ugandan understands that we are doing a good job, or is that difficult to get because we haven't been good in explaining it?
I guess yes and no, Samson. Yes, because some have really seen the benefits of this infrastructure, the need for roads, the need for power, and they realize we could not move from being a very basic agricultural society to being an agribusiness society and then moving to industrialization. Those who see it get it. But others, you talk to them and they say, can I eat the road? They want to know the connection. They want money. They want income. Today, Uganda is a country with the majority of the population are youthful, people under 35 years old. Now, those people, they need to make ends meet. They need to see the connection. The beauty of infrastructure, generally, is it's a great equalizer. It does not discriminate. Whether you're old or young, rich or poor, black or white, it doesn't matter what religion, where you come from. We all need infrastructure. We all use it equally. Where you are from, you can benefit. And that's why the government's agenda is to make sure there's infrastructure across the country, so that the roads are there, electricity is there. They are rolling out an aggressive plan to make sure that it's the equalizer. It's a tool for fighting poverty. It's a tool for narrowing the gap between the rich and the poor, that income disparity. We need infrastructure that is reliable for everybody to have a chance at increasing their production. Infrastructure in poor countries, especially in Africa, takes away 2% of our GDP. And it impacts our productivity by 40%. Now, in the last 25 years, our productivity has increased so much more. Instead of just being importers, buying in all kinds of things, we are now becoming net exporters. Our challenge today is markets. We need bigger infrastructure so that we can get our goods out quickly, efficiently, economically, so that it's viable for Ugandans. And that's what the government is focusing on. How can we export? How can we build our revenue base? How can we empower all Ugandans to be part of the economy? Because if we talk about jobs, what jobs will they be if they are not into business-minded, entrepreneurship? Whatever job you're doing, it's tied to something. Success comes from buying and selling. If you're not buying something or selling something, there's no trade. We need to encourage this trade. Now, we've done a fantastic job with the roads, and we've got a bit more to go. I wish we had the railways on track. That's something people are crying about. One day we shall be talking about railways. We've got the internet today. People are trading online. So it is so important. That's how resources are built. The rich nations have got all this infrastructure as the basic building blocks. And then you build upon that. Then education makes sense. Better healthcare makes sense. Living a longer life makes sense. All these things will fall in play once you've got good infrastructure. So we're at the heart of the economy when we talk about infrastructure.
And if I may, speaking to you now, the investor in you, because I know places where there is a new road, there is electricity, and there is water, and the young person crying of poverty. Why isn't that road, water, and electricity translating into income, and what needs to be done there?
There's normally a time lag between the time of investment in infrastructure and when you are reaping the benefits. That curve grows slowly up. So when the road was done, say to my home area, Ibanda, the road made it brought the opportunity so that we could transport milk. Now, a lot of milk comes from that whole area, Kiruhura, Ibanda, and beyond, and it's trucked to Kampala, and the biggest market is around Kampala. It was trucked beyond Kampala, it was going to Kenya, even as fresh milk, because there was infrastructure. That never used to happen. Now we have too much milk. Everyone is producing milk. So now we need to introduce value addition at source. The same with coffee. The same with bananas. Bananas coming from all parts of the country to feed Kampala and beyond. The Kenyans are switching on to bananas now. We need to supply food to South Sudan, to Eastern Congo. All these need infrastructure. And the more we get involved, especially the young people getting involved, that is production. People need to be doing something. So those who complain they don't see the benefit, they really have got to change their attitude. If we have the right attitude as Ugandans, we are in one of the most beautiful countries in the world. And if you were born poor, I cannot blame you, because your parents missed the opportunity. But anybody who's alive today, you're a young person, you should not die poor. The opportunities are in abundance. It's applying your mind, building a network, connecting the dots, bit by bit. Anybody earning $1 only per day should move to earning $5. Those earning $5 a day can move to $10 because now the infrastructure is in place. This was a dream 20 years ago, 40 years ago. You couldn't have done any of these things. The power was not there. The water was not there. There were hardly any roads. So we got to celebrate the moment we are at. We've got to realize where we are coming from, but let's stay focused and have the resilience to push forward and do even better.
Gideon, we speak about 230 organizations under the private sector foundation, Uganda. How is your organization, with all this infrastructure in place, contributing to making sure that the next time we come back to have this conversation, we're not talking 230, we're talking thousands of organizations, young people doing businesses and getting together, consuming all this power and demanding more from Selestino and demanding more water? What is being done there in terms of getting more to use what we have?
Thank you very much, Samson. Maybe to remind our viewers, as I come to your question, we have more than 35 projects in the National Development Plan. These are huge projects over the next 5 years. And the success or failure of this project is going to be anchored on how much investments we do in these three sectors, especially in energy, in water, in roads. And I want to inform our viewers out there that the private sector, like you've already said, actually, is already participating in the provision of this infrastructure, and especially so in energy sector. My senior here is already investing in this area. So the private sector, one would say, is a supplier or a provider of infrastructure, but also a user of this infrastructure. Now, how do we use this infrastructure so that the 230 can become 600 and 1,000? one of the things that I want to come back to and really emphasize for our viewers to know is that the problem of infrastructure in this country is not about availability. It's about how we utilize it, how we maintain it, how we sustain this infrastructure. And I really want our viewers to get this right.
Repeat that.
It's very important.
Repeat it again.
Uganda's problem in infrastructure is not about availability. We have seen this in energy. We are seeing this already in roads. You can move from the west to the east, from north to south. You can trade across this country, especially on the trunk roads. We still have problems on community access roads, yes, but I think we are progressively getting there. On water, we have seen the kind of progress that is being made already. Now, our challenge as Ugandan citizens is to maintain this infrastructure. It pains me when you find a road that has been done and our young people are burning tires in the middle of these roads. It's part of this one way to create potholes in these roads. To find people vandalizing cables when they have been laid by UMEME. To find people really vandalizing pipes that have been laid by the national water and so on. This is our infrastructure. It should be able to add to the competitiveness of the private sector. And the reason the cost is way too high for energy, for all these utilities, is because of the costs of the infrastructure, the equipment and so on, that are laid in there. Now, if you vandalize, if you steal, if you don't take care of the infrastructure that has been laid amidst your communities, I think we are shooting ourselves in the foot. And there is no way, therefore, we can grow from 230 to 1,000. I think the magic bullet here is, let us consider our infrastructure, because it's really expensive. If Alan here told you a kilometer of road, how much it costs, and you put that in billions or trillions, you would really see that the taxpayer is being pushed to the wall. Now, if the taxpayer has been pushed to the wall, you, with a personal motive, should not really take Ugandans for granted. And I think this is where we have a future, because we are all moving towards a common future as a country. So this is our infrastructure. Let us make sure that once laid, it's well maintained. You know, I was driving to Arua. I think it's about a year ago since I was in Arua. I don't know whether that road is now being maintained, Allen's. But I really wondered, because the bush was carving into the road. This is a major road. And it speaks to what she said earlier. The maintenance costs. We can do the construction of this infrastructure, lay the bridges, do the roads, and so on and so forth. But as long as we don't put aside a budget that is going to look after these roads from the public sector side, then we cannot talk about a sustainable infrastructure in this country. And for us as private sector, this is what we want to see. But it takes two to tango. It's not only the government that has to put money in the budget to maintain roads. We, the people who are using these roads, must be responsible in the use of this infrastructure.
You raise a very important aspect that I'd like to dwell on here by, first of all, giving a very embarrassing and personal story. When I moved elsewhere in the UK, before I could find a job, I had a vehicle that I was driving that had not paid some of the taxes. I parked it somewhere to go and work, and I found about 4 or 5 Englishmen surrounding the vehicle to find out whose it was that was driving a vehicle in England without paying tax. It's citizen responsibility. Do you think, and how can we get to the place where somebody takes road furniture or infrastructure and you hear people saying, "Abana beyiza ku ngudo za mchala Kagina," and people don't care? You've gone to places where there's a brand new road, people have built houses and they are silting it, and nobody cares. How can we get to the point where we understand they are not government roads, they are not Kagina roads? I've heard they now even have Musisi roads, to these are our roads and we are going to jealously protect them. They are our roads, they are our electricity poles, they are our water pipes. What is missing there, Gideon?
Moral decadence. I think that's the problem we have.
How can we get there?
And it's not an overnight solution. We cannot expect to have a society that's going to move away from what you are describing overnight. I think it might even run over generations. Yes, this is very important because how does
we've got to start somewhere. Where do we start?
How does someone turn into a thief? It's not after they have come out of their graduate school. No, it starts from the foundation years. If you grow up stealing, you remain a thief even when you're a top civil servant. Yes, even when you're a top entrepreneur. This happens. People are bribing, people are doing all sorts of things. So it's moral decadence. It's a fabric that we need to fight against, in my opinion. But it's not going to be an overnight thing. We really have to start somewhere. Parenting is very important. We have a program at the private sector where we're talking about early childhood development. This is where we need to start. Because in future, when you're employing someone, you don't want them to steal your money and your people are siphoning fuel. Kagina will tell you. People are siphoning fuel from the sites that they are doing. These are engineers. Some of them.
Siphoning fuel from a grader that has come to do their road.
This is a professional person, but it's not something that they have learned from school. So the moral decadence, people are bribing, people are avoiding and evading taxes. Why? It's not something that you are going to get someone out of just overnight. So it's a societal problem that we need to carve in quickly and make sure that we gradually put back people on the line.
So Patrick, if I can come back to you, are we responsible for slowing down our infrastructure development? We the citizens ourselves who are also complaining that it's not growing fast enough, because when we hear the road is coming my direction, then I plan to hike the price of my land. And yet I want a road. How do we get the people in Uganda to protect the road that takes their milk to the market?
I think what is lacking today is the level of patriotism about our country. We need to love our country. And I say everybody in a leadership position. Leaders are not just the president, the members of parliament, ministers. Anybody with a position of responsibility, from a teacher, a primary school teacher, is a leader. You need to sensitize your people. We've got to go back. Ugandans had a wound too. What happened? Yes, there's been moral decadence in the past, especially during the checkered history of Uganda, what we went through after Amin and Apote 1 and 2. But that doesn't mean our very moral fiber is so badly eroded. We can do something about it. We have not crossed the point of no return. I have faith, strong faith, that Ugandans are good people inside. Tourists come here and they can't believe how beautiful our country is and how beautiful the people are. We are genuinely good people. We need to raise the level of awareness. We need to show them that in spite of challenges, we need to be resilient. Don't change your values. We shared things. The village raised the child. Those values need to come back, where we love our country, and the things that are being done are not being done for the president, they are being done for us. He can't be the one in Lira, in Arua, in Kotido, in Moroto. He hardly goes there. He goes there once in a year or twice in a year. These things are built for us. The infrastructure belongs to us. We need to protect it. When everybody is doing well, the country rises. We can't be always touted as one of the poorer countries of the world. God has been kind to us during this COVID time. We have managed to survive, not only survive, but maybe thrive. We're coming out of this stronger as a country. Let's take advantage and make sure that we are on the map for the right things. Our tourism is growing very well. It's been hampered temporarily, but we are positive it will come back. Infrastructure is there, industrialization is happening. We've got young people who are good at work. They've got the right attitude. They're hardworking. All they need is direction. Point them at what they need. The government's programs for Emioga, once the capital comes in, because that's the biggest problem for young people, is that little capital to get them going. They have initiative, and the will is there. One of the most enterprising countries in the world. So I have hope in Uganda. We can turn the clock back. Our infrastructure will be safe. We all need to pull together And that's a responsibility not just for the church leaders or our Muslim leaders. We need everybody in a leadership position to be pulling in the same direction. Uganda will rise and shine again.
Well, thank you very much. Shall we continue on a night in which we have all agreed that there is no crime in being positive? I've never seen anyone getting anything positive out of anything negative, unless we're talking miracles here. Let me come back to you. And you certainly, at least in the minds of some, Alan, have had a generous appropriation of the budget. It may not feel so, but some think that way. And that's over the last 10 years. Are we seeing a place where this budget will drop? When you began in the beginning, I also heard you talking about getting us to construct our own roads. Some wondering, we have so many students of engineering coming out of our university, where are we still importing people to build our roads? Can't we build our roads ourselves?
Yeah, we certainly can build our own roads. We've developed enough skill. There are other constraints that stop us from building our own roads and inviting companies from outside. And that really has to do with how strong a company is, how financially healthy it is to do these roads. Because when we advertise for roads, we actually do it open. It's everybody. Anyone can participate. It's international. But the ones who get the roads, like the bigger roads, the trunk roads I was telling you about, are mainly those who are able to mobilize financing, mobilize equipment, personnel. Personnel, I think we have a number of good engineers. But the budget, yes, it really is relative. Our roads are expensive. Let me begin by saying that roads are expensive to construct. Nobody should want a cheap road. You will get a cheap product. So a road is an expensive item to construct. However, we must be able to construct roads that will last us enough to grow our economy to generate even more income. You asked me a question earlier, why are our roads lasting only 15 years? Because that's how much money you're putting in. We can actually do roads that last us 50 years. There are other countries doing that. They're investing enough money. So if you invest money for 15 years, you'll get a 15-year road. If you invest money for 50-year road, you'll get a 50-year road. That is not the problem. But the fact that we get a fairly large budget does not mean that we could not do with more. You've got to understand what is the need.
Okay.
What is the need? What is the need for us to build the type of roads that will spur the economy to grow, that will make tourism grow, that will make industry grow, that will allow agriculture products to be exported out of the country? And if we only have 5,000 kilometers out of the 21,000 that we manage, surely, how can we say you get a lot of money, therefore, perhaps let's do something else? So my point that I want to drive home is that we are moving slowly, but we are sequentially getting there. Our budget pre-2008, like I told you, was I think it was about 300 billion. But government realized that if this economy is going to grow, you must invest in roads. And I'm really grateful that government has done that consistently over the last 12 or so years. Government has been pumping more money in roads. And we have had our budget grow from 300 to 1 trillion to 2 trillion to now 3.8 trillion. And all that money actually does the roads that you are driving on comfortably and maintaining them. The only problem I have is that we are not balancing between development and maintenance. I think we spoke about that point earlier. Unless we maintain what we have, we will lose it. And sometimes we must check the demand for tarmac and maintain what we have, the tarmac that we have, put more money for maintenance, And then with the Maram roads, we can actually do roads that in gravel condition that are comfortable to ride on as long as we're maintaining them in their gravel condition. We have roads across our country right now that are still gravel, but very good roads. Of course, there will be dust, there will be that discomfort, but you will be spending less money than if you sent all of it into development and not be able to maintain what you have. So it's very important for Ugandans to understand that maintenance. Let me give you an example. If you build a house today, 10 years down the road, the roof is leaking or the paint is off, or if you don't do it, you're going to lose that house. Everything you invested in that house, you're going to lose it. So I cannot overemphasize the need for maintenance.
Is there a historical reason for our problem? That's one. Number two, direction. Because there are those of the view that let's build an expensive road that lasts 50 years and get it done. Others of the view, no, that's too expensive. Let's have 15-year span roads, many of them. Now the problem with that, some argue, is by the time you finish these, the first ones you began are also due to do again. So it becomes difficult to see that we're actually doing work. Are we on the right path?
I think we're actually on the right path. There are a couple of things that we need to do to make our roads last 15 years. One, of course, is the maintenance I talked about. The second one is do not abuse the roads. When we have overloaded trucks, the road which should have lasted 15 years will last you perhaps 5 years. And we have had trucks on our roads that are 30 tons overloaded. An overloaded truck.
Did you say 30?
30, yeah, 30 tons. We've actually even had 50 tons.
Do we still have way bridges?
That's how we arrest them. Okay. So protection of the infrastructure that we have and then maintaining it will give our roads the life that we need. You know, even after 15 years, you can actually extend beyond 15 years by resealing, by reconstructing, like some of the roads we have right now. The rehabilitation that we're doing, they have reached their service life. They've done 15 years. We rehabilitate them. We'll give them another 5 to perhaps 10 years. So they don't just expire at 15. When you maintain them, you give them more life.
Okay. And is there truth to the whole idea that opening up a brand new road is more expensive than what you're talking about resealing and all?
Oh, yes. When you're upgrading a road, you start from the base, the sub-base, then the base, then you go into the pavement layers, then you put on the black top, which is what we call the road, the tarmac. When you're resealing, that base is still there, it is solid from the first time that you constructed it, and you may just be removing the surface and resealing. So it will be cheaper.
Okay, very interesting. And I see Engineer Mugisha here wanting to add something because he's also an engineer and he knows these things. Is there anything you want to explain from an engineering point of view on roads before we go to your water?
No, what I would want to appreciate that my sister Allen is slowly becoming an engineer. Because when you see the way she's explaining and the qualifications that you presented there, I think she should add there a bachelor of something in engineering. But what I would want to say is that as an engineer, of course, I also want to underscore the importance of maintenance. The importance of maintenance, you do construct roads, but if you don't maintain them, then you have an issue. And I think that's why, if you see the trend of things, sometimes in Uganda here, is Allen is spending some of her time reconstructing roads. So if those roads had been maintained properly, maybe she would be spending that time on opening new roads in new areas. So I want to really wholly agree with her that the issue of maintenance needs to be, much as we are putting a lot of budgets on road construction, new road construction, some good budget also needs to be put on the maintenance side.
Okay, and there's a burning question here that I also want us to bury. Have we broken any records in terms of the most expensive road per kilometer in Africa?
Are you asking Silva?
He teaches engineering, so he would know.
You know, I don't think that's my question. If you're asking me as an engineer, I have my...
I'm asking of somebody who has been in a classroom teaching.
As an engineer, I really want to think that the engineering department in UNRA is doing a good job.
Okay.
Is doing a good job, and we only need to really do good maintenance there, so that newly constructed roads can last as long as they were designed to last.
Okay, fantastic. And half your cross has been carried. The Lord says that everyone must bear their cross. Alan, some have said that our roads are the most expensive on the continent. Have you heard of it? And what's the truth?
Yes, I have heard of it. Actually, even addressed it in the media. I wrote an article about a month ago in the New Vision to try and demystify the Uganda has the most expensive roads. Unfortunately, I don't find a lot of data to back that assertion. And the way social media works in Uganda, one person says one thing, another person picks up. By the time it gets to the third person, it's fact, even when it is not true. And I think it is our responsibility to actually find out, is this true? So in that article, I give comparison between Entebbe Expressway and Thika Road, two different roads. I give an example of the Nile Bridge, the source of the Nile Bridge, plus another, compare it with a bridge in, I think in Nigeria. Because people tend to throw these things out there and they expect you to defend what is not correct.
Okay.
First of all, roads are not cheap, so nobody should want a cheap road. On average...
Somebody has said that if you think they are try doing a bit of tarmac towards your house.
Yes, do it at your own cost, then you will know. There are reasons why people perhaps might think that roads are expensive, because when you hear that on average a tarmac road will range between $900,000, maybe $800,000 to $1 million, that sounds like a huge lot of money. But look, break that down and find out what is it that is in that $1 million. The materials, the equipment, the financing. And then in this country, like a number of African countries, you have to cost delays. Nobody's going to bring their money here in Uganda and just wait for months for a license. For example, an environmental license or a land title. You know, so they will cost the delays, they will cost the bureaucracy, they will cost corruption. Because when they go to different government offices looking for either permits or they want a contract, they pay for them. All that goes into the road. So if you factor that out, our roads are actually very comparable in the region. And remember, we are in the hinterland. Some of our materials comes from outside, like the bitumen, we import bitumen. And the equipment, we don't manufacture this equipment in Uganda. So the transport cost for the inputs into the roads tend to make roads expensive. Then perhaps the final point is that roads are not uniform. You know, a road in, let's say in Kapchora, in the highlands, with the black soils, black slippery soils, is not the same as a road perhaps between Zirowe and Wobolense, which is fairly flat and whose weather is quite good. So we must be able to understand when you say a road is expensive, what is the design you're talking about? What are the inputs? And what are all these external factors that somebody must cost to say what the cost of a road is. So are Ugandan roads more expensive than other roads in Africa? No, I don't believe that.
And maybe finally on that, because it's a big issue, does our land tenure system also add to the cost of our roads?
What the land tenure system does is cause part of the delay. First of all, I have no problem with the land tenure system. Land belongs to the people, and people, once you have your asset and government wants it, government should compensate you. But the process of acquiring that is long and elaborate, and because you must go through the process of surveying, and after surveying you go into the valuation, and after valuation then the payment process, and then the subdivision. All that takes a long time. That's why a contractor will not put a contractor on site until we have got at least 30% of the site for him to begin. There are countries who own the land, and I can't speak for them, but when those countries are able to construct roads faster and cheaper than us, it's only because they're able to give land because it belongs to government. Here, land belongs to the people. I own a piece of property. If government came to do a road through my property, I'd certainly want to be compensated because I've been made poorer by handing over that property.
Yeah, thank you very much, and maybe that's also your chance to eat a bit on the national cake, so I hear them say. I don't have too much land.
Samson.
Engineer, yes.
On that question of the roads being so expensive in Uganda, as a patriotic Ugandan, I was offended, and I tried to find out. And I'm glad Alan has spoken elaborately about it. But if I may add, especially about this Entebbe road, because they were pinpointing the Entebbe road being one of the most expensive.
And the northern bypass.
Yes, also the bypass. The bypass, the problem is it has taken forever. It's taken 20 years they started building the bypass. So time does not simply allow to make the road cheap. It's been a nightmare to all of us, the road users, but eventually we are seeing light. And these flyovers they have made recently make a very big difference. I wonder, why didn't they think of them in the first place? The Entebbe road, if you've been on Entebbe road, it is, let's say, 3 lanes going and 3 lanes coming, which is 6 roads. Because people talk about a kilometer about $1 million. When that social media went out saying a road typically costs $1 million. And for that distance, it should have cost this much, but it costs 6 times. But there are literally 6 lanes. And it's got the longest viaduct. Where you cross that swamp, it was an enormous task to come across that. That bit of the swamp is the longest swamp in East Africa, the longest viaduct over a swamp in East Africa. But that was an engineering feat and something we can be proud of, that in Uganda we did it so successfully. When you drive along that viaduct, I go there quite often and I use that road, and it's a pleasure. The saving it has made in time, 20 minutes to be or 25 minutes to be in Entebbe. The benefit of that road is priceless compared to what the cost was. It's an alternative to the main road. It has made the whole area there develop. So people should not look at it for the pennies per square meter. They should look at how many lanes there were.
Being knocked left, right, and center. That's the problem with good roads in Uganda. Now they're even ramming into the gate.
On that road, so errant drivers will perhaps be checked. I just wanted to...
And maybe on that, because there are some Ugandans who feel that if Kasumba rams into the road, then the rest of Ugandans shouldn't pay for his carelessness. Can't he pay for the damage?
Yes, actually, the law requires that if you damage any part of a road, you should pay for it. So those that were able to get, we have made those, made them repair them, what are they called, the guardrails. Okay. And though sometimes it depends on the extent of the damage, because some people actually lose their lives and are not able to, are not available to repair. So government bears that cost. Okay. But can I just say one thing?
Please.
This is very interesting, and I'm so sorry we're running out of time. That viaduct is 1.5 kilometers. But that is not just the length. Because it is in a swamp, its piles, the legs on which it stands, sink 50 meters. Can you imagine the amount of concrete that is sunk in there? You would understand if it was on a flat surface and it was, when people say it's expensive. But it's not the only bridge we have there. You know, there's another bridge called Kagwa Bridge, just before you get to Munyonyo. There are those interchanges. Interchanges are not easy to build, not cheap to build. So there is all this debate, but sometimes you sit back and say, I have given information. How much more can I do to change people's minds who are set in speaking negatively against their own country and looking across, because the grass is always green across, right? Who are speaking negatively and saying the road thicker is less expensive than Entebbe Expressway. Okay. The actual fact is that it is not.
Well, how much more you can do, come to NBS more often, because the platform is always available. Engineer, let's come to you. How do you go about the whole business of compensating persons? Because you're also in the business of using private land. Do you also get the experience that you are delayed and that you pay more to take water to those who actually want it?
Mr. Kasumba.
And you could also speak about sewerage, because you are national water and sewerage. I know it's some meal time for some, but we could as well speak about sewerage for very obvious reasons.
Just first allow me as an engineer to also comment on the issue of roads. It's true that that comment or that narrative has been appearing, especially on the social media. And people who front it are actually non-technical people. I can assure you, when you look at the way that road is, and I want to discourage people from comparing things like, you have to compare like with like.
Not apples and oranges.
That road has so many piles. Piles are quite expensive. It is not actually the amount of concrete only. It is also the mode of construction, the method of construction. How do you put something 50 meters down?
Water.
It has its own unique characteristics, and I think when we are comparing, we need to be very careful. It's not bad to compare, but at least we must remove the environmental factors, the factors that make things different. So that's quite important. Two, the issue of, but before I talk about the issue of compensation, I want to underscore this issue, that we have a National Development Plan 3 that specifically says for water that in the next 5 years, every Ugandan should have had water. I think this is important for Ugandans to know that the government has put in place a plan to make sure that every Ugandan that doesn't have water gets water, and also make significant progress as far as sewerage coverage is concerned. Now, coming to the issue of compensation, it's as complicated as it is in the other projects. I mean, when you want to do a project, the landowner owns the land, of course, and the law says you must compensate this person before you implement the what? The project. And some of these people can be quite crafty, because he has seen you want to pass a pipeline, for example, he will demand anything. The chief government of UNRA might state a certain amount, and he says he wants something different from that, sometimes over exaggerated. And then you go into this hassling, and the end result is delay of a project. We've had issues. We've had project cost overruns because of delays in compensating people. So it's an issue. I'm happy that government had wanted to move on it. I hope something can be done at a certain point, so that at least if a project is going to pass somewhere and it is supposed to benefit the public, mechanism should be found of doing the project, and then you sort out the issue of compensation for somebody. But this idea of first compensate before you run a public good through land, I think is an issue that needs to be addressed.
There are some who may be saying that it's very difficult after with the wedding to come back to the issues of dowry, once, especially when she's started to have children already.
Some of these projects are actually supposed to keep people living.
Okay.
You take, for example, you want to run a sewer line to evacuate sewage from people. Now, when you don't run that sewer line, then of course sewage will stay with the people. So for you to want to keep people with sewage, there's an opportunity cost in there. And I think it is the whole issue that needs to be discussed, and we get a win-win approach of how compensations are done. On the issue of sewerage.
And on that one, I also want you to deal with, we have an organization that deals with sewerage, but I see everybody doing this themselves, even in places, for instance, like Nalia, where you have a plant.
No, I want to make this clear, Mr. Kasumba. There are so many ways of sewage disposal. There is on-site sanitation. You can do that. It is an acceptable way of dealing with sewage. You only have to be sure of the environmental issues. Sometimes this sewage, when you treat it on site, you infiltrate the ground with sewage, and then you end up, affecting the environment. But where it is safe to discharge sewage on site, I think that is one way of sewage disposal, using septic tanks and using other mechanisms where sewage is treated on site. But then there is where you cannot put septic tanks, like in the middle of town, or where places are heavily built and there is basically no space for what? For sewage. Or where it is a swampy place, whereby if you just discharge sewage, raw sewage there, you will be affecting the environment. That's where we have a sewerage system, where you have pipes that pick sewage from people's homesteads, that pick sewage from industrial establishments, and take it to a central sewage treatment plant. Now, we've done a lot of work in Kampala. Right now, listeners will agree with me that the smell which used to be at Wankoko is no longer there. Sometimes whenever you would pass there, you would have to put a handkerchief on your nose, or even raise the windscreen, or bear the smell there. Now it's not there because we have the most beautiful treatment plant, sewage treatment plant in Eastern Central Africa. It is a treatment plant which is there, very huge. It can even generate power. We are generating power there that is powering the plant. Sorry, my colleague.
You are competing with him.
We have produced your business there. We have constructed another one in Chinawataka.
Okay.
A very huge one. We constructed another one in Rubiji. People in Rubiji used to complain, but now you can hold a picnic there. The sewage is being treated there, but you can hold a picnic. And we are also even getting manure there, which we are selling to the public. We are going to construct another one. The bidding process is complete in Narukorongo, which will help those people of Rubaga, Mutundwe, and even some parts of Chengera. And we are thinking of adding 15 more sewage treatment plants in other towns which don't have sewage. We did a packaged sewage treatment plant in Ikoro.
Is there a town that doesn't have sewage?
Yeah.
Oh, you mean sewage plant?
There are towns without national water sewerage system.
Yeah, but every town by nature has, as long as there are human beings, there's sewage.
Yes, they have. Okay. That's why you don't find feces on the roads, because what is the issue is the sustainability of the system that is there.
Okay.
So we are thinking of identifying some towns where we think environmental degradation can be an issue, and then we start sink sewage treatment plants there.
Okay. My brother Selestino, there's a feeling that power can be cheap, especially when not stolen, because when it's stolen, that's another matter. And two, let's talk about the ease of getting connected. Some are even saying, from what I hear here, just before we get to the social media questions, is that even the Yaka meters are not there. Isn't that going to encourage people doing what we don't want to mention on national television?
Okay, thank you, Samson. I think the key thing on pricing, you look at, pricing is a factor of two things. The cost divided by the volumes that you sell. And as indicated, the government has done a phenomenal job in investing significantly in generation, coupled with private sector, investments in transmission, and also as UMEME, we investing in all this infrastructure. Now, there's a direct correlation between utilization of that infrastructure and pricing. What's more important now, and you raised this question previously, is with all this infrastructure, be it roads, be it water, be it ICT, be it electricity, how do we position Uganda as an investment destination? All these industrial parks coming up will drive towards better utilization of this infrastructure, which will actually reduce the cost of infrastructure or generate more income for the country, which could be realized through taxation or through creating jobs. The second bit that is fundamental, which we've learned from other countries, is what they call appliance financing. And most times we run this infrastructure, we build the lines, we put up the transformers. However, the community may not be aware of the potential of this power. So by enabling them, I remember His Excellency Prime Minister Modi, when he visited here from India, where he was saying the best way is, can we provide appliances where people can use the appliances either for agro-processing or commercial activities, substitute some of the things that they were actually importing. That way, you have better utilization of your infrastructure, you are creating jobs, and you are making income within the country. Some things that we're importing now, we do not actually need to import them, but we can do them locally and create jobs and empower our communities economically. The third element you look at is about pricing of power, which you have raised up. And I'm glad the CEO for the Private Sector Foundation has raised it. If you really look for the industries, literally they're getting this power at the cost of production, which is an average of 8-9 cents. And past midnight, 6 p.m., some of them are getting it at 5 cents. The good news is government has also invested significantly in Simba and Karuma. Those two will be generating power at an average of 4.7 cents. So what we believe is once the generation costs come down, we as distributors normally pass on what we receive from the transmission and the generators. That will go a long way in further reducing the cost of power, but more importantly, to use its power for production, because River Nile is running. If we don't use that power, it's wasted energy. On the issue of losses, yeah, losses are very, very important. And that's one of the reasons why the sector was reformed. If you look back in the early 2000s, UEB was a vote within the government of Uganda budgets to pay salaries, to do maintenance and all that. But through the reforms, the sector itself is generating now 2 trillion. I know my colleague at UNRA, they collect around 20+ trillion, which is 10% of that. The choices are the same 2 trillion could come from the national budget, or this is complementing government to finance this infrastructure. I think the most important bit that is more important for us now is price it right for affordability, but aim towards accelerating to achieve universal access by the NTP targets of by 2040 through either rooftop solutions off-grid or through the grid. However, losses which we have brought down from 38%, 16%, that is crystallization of value to the consumer, and we encourage our consumers to report any incidents of power theft. On connections, lastly, yes, government came up with a policy to connect customers if you pay 20,000. Because of COVID, as we indicated, the funding went down. We opened the gateway. So far, around 8,000 customers are paid for their own connections. The good news is there is another 87,000 customers who are going to be connected under funding from ADB. All the materials are in the country. That works, we can reach.
And thankfully for the time of this, I have not had our generator running. That would have been a very interesting situation if our generator was running when the CEO is here. Gideon, if you may, you will begin off with our concluding remarks. It is 7 minutes to midnight. It doesn't feel that it is gone that quickly, but it actually has. You will begin off the concluding remarks, and you will have 3 minutes since you haven't spoken in a long time.
Very quickly, Samson and Next Media. This is very interesting, and we much appreciate this discussion. I really want, on behalf of the private sector, to say a big thank you to your team here. But 2 or 3 takeaways from this discussion. One is for all Ugandans to know that infrastructure is expensive, and the only person that has to pay for that is you and me. Government is about you and me. So if we are going to pay for that, we must diligently pay the taxes so that we finance this infrastructure. That's one. 2, we must watch over each other to make sure that we maintain this infrastructure once laid. That is going to be extremely important. The expressway that we have been referring to is a new road. But if you get there, you will see that all the road signs have been vandalized. They are not there.
Even with the fence?
Even before. It's actually, I think it was commissioned, but I think officially it has not been, we are not paying for it. Yes. And yet it's supposed to be a toll road. So you can really see the level of moral decadence that we've been referring to here. So we need to watch over each other to make sure that we maintain our infrastructure as civil society, as private sector. Then 2, I want to suggest that roads, energy, or power and water, they collaborate more. Because we people who are using the roads, if the road has been laid after 6 months and it's being dark, so that pipes are laid from national water, or cables are laid from, then you're already ruining the road, you're already wasting away the road, but this road has cost a fortune. So let them collaborate so that we begin to build this infrastructure together and we do not waste away. Okay. Then 3, the maintenance cost. Let us always remember that. Maintenance cost. Once laid, infrastructure must be maintained. It must not be vandalized. We must lay a budget that is going to take care of the maintenance of this infrastructure. And that's going to be very important for the future.
Let's get another user before we get the main panelists in. Yes.
Thank you, Samson. In closing, infrastructure is an enabler. Whatever the infrastructure, it will not bring food on the table. It will not put money in your pocket. But it will enable you to create value. At the end of the day, you can work very hard, but if you're not creating value, you're losing out. Now, we have to have a mindset change as Ugandans to see the opportunity presented. The government has used its means to redistribute the income of government. They collect taxes, distribute it. They build infrastructure so that everybody gets a fair chance. And embrace opportunity. It's a culture of working hard. 6 days out of 7. Even the Bible said, work for one day. We cannot lay back and think that the world is waiting for us. We've got to have a culture of frugality, being careful with money, understanding the psychology of money. We've got to have a culture of that is going to help